You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. All right, and welcome to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. I'm your host, Mike Riley, of course. I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Miss Cam Robson, and my girl, Charlie Sandy. And, of course, we got Brooke Dockery in the house. She's the executive producer of our show. And we also have a live audience in the house tonight. We got Isaac, Ali, Nick, and I think we even got Alicia back there, right? Never mind. Alicia's not here. No, never mind. We usually have somebody else here. But anyway, we want to welcome all of y'all to the show, and thank you for coming out. And definitely want to shout out all of our new subscribers. Everybody who's been subscribing on iTunes and listening to us on Stitcher and all of the other apps that you can download us on. Thank you so much for all the love. We definitely appreciate it. Today is Thursday, December 1st, 2016. We are 41 days out from the inauguration of President Trump. And it has been a hell of a ride since the last time we all spoke. How was everybody's Thanksgiving, by the way? How was yours, Charlie and Cam? Y'all have a good Thanksgiving?
Mine was great. I was an honorary American for a day, so that was pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, that is good to be an honorary American for a day.
Yeah, mine was pretty good too. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, you went to Hawaii. That must have been really nice.
Oh yeah. Very nice.
Yeah, definitely. My Thanksgiving was pretty cool, too. You know what's interesting about my Thanksgiving this year is we didn't get a chance to really get into a lot of political conversation. Usually me and my family, when we get together, we can't stop ranting about, oh, this happened and that happened and everything else like that. And it's funny because we had an actual peaceful Thanksgiving, which is pretty cool. But then when I went up to, I had a Friendsgiving kind of after that. And when we did that, and me and my friends kind of started, inevitably we kind of started getting into political conversation, and we kind of started to talk about what was going on, after the election and everything else like that with, this President Trump that we're going to be facing pretty soon. And, one of my friends kept kind of bringing up, these things that have been kind of happening lately with the tweets. I mean, there was this thing that happened earlier this week where there was somebody burned a flag. And, it was all over the media. And then Donald Trump sent out this tweet about, revoking the citizenship of people who burn the flag and all this other stuff. And then there was another tweet Donald Trump sent out regarding he would have won the popular vote, had 3 million legals not have voted or something like that. And she kind of went on and on about this, and it kind of helped me. Well, it didn't help me, but it really dawned on me at that point, and we all kind of started talking about this. It dawned on me how much a lot of the electorate is still pretty much not really engaged with the issues. And I can't tell anymore if Donald Trump is either just incredibly smart or incredibly stupid. It's one or the other. I'm starting to feel like his way of mastering and manipulating the media is practically ingenious. I mean, that's pretty much how he won the election. Kind of bamboozled people. And if you kind of look on it now, you see that he's turning back on a lot of those campaign promises that he was throwing out there the entire election. I mean, this whole thing about bringing jobs back to America and everything else like that. We just got through watching a rally with Donald Trump. It was his first rally he's had since the election. He held one in Cincinnati, Ohio, a little earlier. And basically he held this rally because him and Mike Pence signed over this legislation through Carrier, who's owned by, I want to say, it's one of these huge weapons contractors out in D.C. where they make like $6 billion a year through weapons contracts through the federal government. And basically what Mike Pence did was he agreed to stay governor of Louisiana up until December 15th, or not Louisiana, Indiana, in order to sign off pretty much these tax breaks and pretty much incentivizing this company Carrier, and they make shit like air conditioners and heaters and stuff like that. Pretty much giving them tax breaks to stay in the United States. So basically Donald Trump went out there bragging that he just saved 1,000 jobs. Right? Did y'all hear about this?
Yeah, briefly, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm all for the fact that he saved 1,000 jobs. That's awesome. That's really great. But that's not what he campaigned on, is it? Not to mention, he's giving pretty much like subsidies to Carrier for every job that they create in the United States. So for every job for every person that Carrier hires, they're going to take taxpayer money from the state of Indiana and pay Carrier like $200,000 or something crazy like that. So it's cutting from the rich and just taking it from the middle class. But people don't see that. All people hear about and all people see are the tweets, the personality, the bravado. You know, you should have heard him at this rally.
He's this narcissist that lives in the moment, and you can't quite tell if it's pure genius that he's diverting everyone away from the fact that he has not followed through on the ridiculous claims he made during his campaign, or if he's just so thick that he can't get it through his head that people are expecting him to follow through.
Well, do you think people are expecting him to follow through? I mean, I kind of question this. I mean, do you think people really believe half the shit he was saying when he was campaigning? I mean, he was over here talking about, I'm going to prosecute Hillary Clinton. I don't think anybody really believed he was actually going to do that.
I think people believe that they wanted to believe. You know, I mean, you look at all the damning evidence against him on things like sexual harassment cases and all that, and those are the things that, when provided with substantial evidence, people were still saying, "Oh, I don't think it's true. I don't believe that. I think that he's proven that it was a mistake," or "I think the evidence isn't as damning as they say it is." And yet, when faced with things that are patchy and are not giving in detail, like we'll get rid of all the illegal immigrants and we will put Hillary in jail and whatnot, since they're things that they like to hear, that are buzzwords for them, they're clickbait, they will immediately think, well, yes, that'll happen. He'll make it happen somehow. He's just this symbol for all that they want changed in America, and they don't care how it happens. They think it will.
Right. And I think that's the perfect description for it. I mean, we were just talking about all this backlash that happened because of this election, and seeing how, like you said, like these click words, the things that people kind of identified with that really, you know, riled them up. I mean, even at this rally he just had in Cincinnati, he's still talking shit on Hillary, and, you know, you're still hearing people scream, "Lock her up," and stuff like that. But like I said, for me, I mean, you got to think about it. Donald Trump is a reality television star, right?
Yeah. I
mean, he understands reality TV probably better than most people. I mean, you know, and for those of you who are old enough to remember, you know, reality TV was something that came around in the I think there was like a writer's strike in the late 80s or early 90s. And so, you know, they figured out, okay, well, what's a good way we can basically broadcast something without having to pay writers? We do, you know, reality TV. It's cheap, it's easy, you know, and for the most part, it's pretty much scripted. But it's just a cheap way of providing talent, and Americans eat it up. And pretty much, we just bought 4 years of a reality TV show, if you ask me.
I completely agree. I think that he knows that humankind feeds on this kind of drama. It's the kind that we, since if we don't have it in our day-to-day lives, we find it on our TV screens. Right. And we essentially just found a new MTV channel, a new Keeping Up with the Kardashians, in the form of CNN and Fox and all these new channels that were broadcasting this new political drama that is America right now. And
that's what's been pissing me off the most about the media. I mean, the media is literally still stuck on the horse race. They're still stuck on the personality side of it. And like I said, it's diverting people from the real issues. And think about Trump's cabinet picks that he's had. So much for draining the swamp, right? I mean,
no kidding.
He got this guy from Goldman Sachs. The main company, the main people he was talking shit off, this Steve Mnuchin. I can't say his name, Lord Jesus. But this guy, you know, he's one of these big billionaires, and Donald Trump's thing is, well, you know, why wouldn't I get a billionaire? You want a guy in there who knows how to make money, right? But that's not what he campaigned on.
Yeah.
You know, so much for this anti-establishment shit. He's tapping Mitt Romney
God.
to be the Secretary of State.
Yeah.
So all these things that, and then he's using democratic ideals.
Well, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. he was a Democrat.
He was, yeah.
And he went to a Republican side because he realised that that was the kind that would feed on this drama that he could give them. And now that he's gotten what he wants, he'll go back to what he does truly believe in, if he can find anything through his gold spray-painted coal heart.
Yeah, I would like to have a gold-painted, spray-painted heart, personally. But, but literally... And I got an article. A friend of mine passed me an article today from the New York Times. That was written by Maureen Dodd, and it kind of she was talking about her Thanksgiving dinner and the things that she experienced, and I think she had dead on with the way her family described their love for Trump and the reasons why they voted for Trump. Because for those of you who don't know, Maureen Dodd is a pretty liberal commentator, but she says she has a family that is just like we were talking about last week. That's just the other half, and I'll read a piece of it for you here. She said Donald Trump pulled off one of the greatest political feats in modern history by defeating Hillary Clinton and the vaunted Clinton machine. The election was a complete repudiation of Barack Obama. His fantasy world of political correctness, the politicalization of the Justice Department and the IRS and the out-of-control EPA, his neutering of the military, his non-support of police, his fixation on things like transgender bathrooms. Since he became president, his party has lost 63 House seats, 10 Senate seats, and 14 governorships. The country has signaled strongly that the last two midterms that they were not happy. The Dems' answers was to give them more of the same from a person that did not like or trust. Preaching and pandering with a message of inclusion, the Democrats have instead become a party where incivility, and bad manners are taken for granted. Rudeness is routine. Religion is mocked, and there is absolutely no respect for differing of opinion. This is what her brother was telling her during Thanksgiving dinner, and this has been the sentiment of the right, of the conservatives, which is why I think they're so riled up now. There's still this backlash that's happening against a liberal agenda, to the point where I think people can care less about all of the issues. They don't care about a lot of the things that Donald Trump said he was going to do and is not going to do. They're not paying attention to his cabinet picks, and if they are, they think his cabinet picks are okay. They're okay with Mike Pence and him having gay conversion therapy, or not. I mean, that's not something he's implemented in his as far as legislation of him being vice president, but that's something that he tried to do in Indiana. They're okay with this type of vibrato. They're okay with this reality TV star. Almost like, and to kind of pick at liberals a little bit, I know a lot of people who didn't really know much about Barack Obama. They didn't know much about his policies. They didn't know much about what he stood for. They just knew he was a cool guy. Guy's cool. That's why I like him. Now, don't get me wrong. Barack Obama is a cool guy, but I also think he was a great president. But if people aren't understanding the issues, and if they're not getting the actual information on policy, and all they're going off of is personality, what does that say for the future of our country when it comes to elections? We might as well get ready for Kanye 2020.
It's a joke. It's turned our political system into a beauty pageant more than anything. What's your personality? What extra talents can you do and all that? And then when you get to the question portion of the beauty contest and you ask them, what do we do about our current situation in Syria or something, they all just go, well, for 30 seconds.
Literally. And I think that's becoming the nature, or at least the culture, that we're starting to get ourselves into. Because sending out a tweet and saying something as, I guess kind of ridiculous as I would have won the popular vote had 2 million people not voted illegally. I don't know if Donald Trump's that stupid.
Despite the fact that one of the major issues was lack of liberal turnout.
And not to mention you won.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've won. Up. Stop digging yourself a bigger hole.
Like, shut the hell up. Like, you won. You don't have to
don't gloat.
Sit there and litigate the past or gloat or whatever else the case may be. But I mean, he's either a master of the media, because the thing about it is he knows that whenever the news is going to start talking about a Donald Trump story, whenever they're going to start mentioning something like privatization or privatizing things, and the fact that what's going on in Indiana right now is a scam, he'll send out a tweet and make people just start talking about something completely different. All right, y'all, we are hitting a break. We will be right back. This is the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. All right, y'all, and welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. I am your host, Mike Riley. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the second segment of our show, which is usually where we do our news of the week, and that's what we're doing this week too. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. I really want to talk about what's going on at the Dakota Access Pipeline, because this has been such a huge news story. The protesters that are there have been they've been sitting it out, and I don't know if it's the sheriff of the county where the Dakota Access Pipeline is going through, or if it was the governor, has issued $100,000 fine for anybody who tries to bring food or water in to help out the protesters. And it's like sub-zero temperatures out there. They're being sprayed with water hoses and being, beat down by police and everything else. And then there's been a lot of crap going on. And basically they're trying to starve them out. And the sheriff told them there to stay there at their own risk. And it's all because this huge corporation wants to run this pipeline through an area that's been given to these people through treaty, through the United States of America, to poison their water and to ruin their environment, instead of running it through Bismarck, where the white people live, where it was originally supposed to be ran. And Trump supports the completion of this Dakota Access Pipeline, which is it goes to show you the corporate interests that are still kind of present, even though he said that there aren't any corporate interests present. And I was reading this article on Reuters. This is according to Valerie Volkovici. I slay people's last names. Don't ever let me say your last name if you have one. She said U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on Thursday, for the first time, says he supports the completion of the pipeline project near the North Dakota Indian Reservation, which has been the subject of months of protests by tribes and environmentalists. I don't even understand this. To run this pipeline through these people's territory, and to break all these environmental codes and everything else like that, and then to starve these protesters out, I think is just absolutely horrific. And it's going to show you the kind of the nature of our country and the corporate interests that are pretty much involved, if you ask me.
I mean, for God's sakes, look at history and all the things that we've done to these people already. Do we really need to do this much more damage to these already diminished numbers and already fractured peace with these people? It's just so sad to see that we're still not over with this war against land. And
why can't they run the damn pipeline through Bismarck, which is I think it's the capital of North Dakota, or it might be one of the bigger cities out there. They won't run it through there. They won't run it through a place where you could poison their water.
Where they're directly affected.
Yeah, I want to know what directly affects them. Because we know that if it's ran through where they want to run it through, it'll damage the environment, it'll poison their water. Is it going to do the same things in Bismarck, or do they have ways to go around that, or do they have money to
I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that from what I've read, that the original plan was to run the pipeline through Bismarck.
Yeah.
And they decided to reroute it through the Indian Reservation.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of like, okay, that's Tuskegee experiments all over again. And, I hear they're trying to pass legislation, because this is what these trade deals, like things like NAFTA and the TPP, were going to do. It's giving these corporations power enough to say that you cannot stand in the way of us making profits. Standing in the way of commerce is considered a crime. Like I think it was some tobacco company was trying to sue the government of Australia, because Australia was making them put pictures of people with lung cancer and things like that on their cigarette boxes to deter people from buying them. And the tobacco company said, you're standing in the way of our profits. And they tried to sue the government of Australia for that. That goes to, and because of these trade deals, they're allowed to do that. That is ridiculous. That's not competition within a free marketplace. That's oligarchy to the highest degree. All right. Well, anyway, this next story. Let's dip into some science news. This is according to SciTech Daily, and this was dated on October 31st. It says that NASA shows Arctic sea ice is losing its bulwark against warming summers. And I know I always hit you guys with one of these climate change stories, but I'm getting a little sad because I don't think I'm ever going to get a chance to see a glacier. I've never been to Antarctica before. But according to the article, it says that new research shows that the Arctic sea ice has been hit with a double whammy over the past decades. As its extent shrunk, the oldest and thickest ice has either thinned or melted away, leaving the sea ice cap more vulnerable to the warming ocean and atmosphere. As you know, this is causing sea level rise. It's causing stronger storms, and it's pretty much damaging our planet for the most part. And I don't think I'm ever going to get a chance to see a glacier. That kind of sucks. But I don't know. And Dakota Access Pipeline definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, no kidding. It's absolutely ridiculous that there is scientific proof that these things are happening, and yet we've still just elected a president that refuses to believe any of this is affecting.
Yeah, I think this is a lot of pissed off about this Trump thing, but we'll see what happens.
Thank God for California.
But I'm gonna post this story up on the website so you guys can check it out. This next story is kind of a sad one. I was reading about this. This was in the New York Times. A couple of years ago, a Tennessee woman, and her first name is Anna. I'm not going to say her last name. You can go online and check. It's all over the place. But basically what happened was, because it's so hard to get an abortion in Tennessee, basically what she did last year was she was in a bathtub and she did the coat hanger thing, where she got in the bathtub and she, tried to abort her fetus by, sticking a coat hanger inside of herself. And she was being charged with, I want to say she got slapped with some felony charges. And they dropped some of the charges, and now they're bringing them back. According to the article, it says a Tennessee woman who's accused of trying to abort her fetus at 24 weeks with a coat hanger last year is facing new felony charges, in a case that has raised concern among some abortion rights groups. The case was concerning this woman, Anna. Like I said, I'm going to omit her last name. She's 32. Has wound its way through the courts of Rutherford County. She's basically facing new charges of aggravated assault, an attempt to procure a miscarriage, and attempted at criminal abortion, which I didn't even know was a thing. She's booked, and she could be facing a lot of time in jail for self-aborting. Now, I wanted to bring this story up to kind of highlight, because it's super duper hard to get abortion access in a place like Tennessee, to the point where this is the route that women will go to do this. And that's some pretty scary shit. And first of all, it's just wrong. Because in places like Tennessee, if you want to get an abortion, you have to go consult. You have to, or it might have been, I forget, I think it was Tennessee. I want to say it was Indiana, definitely in Mike Pence's state. But you have to go consult a doctor. You got to talk to counselors. You got to do all this stuff. Basically, you have to get pretty much a male's consent before a woman can decide what she wants to do with her own body. And I understand abortion's a hot topic issue. I am not a fan of it, but at the same time, that's not my call. That's not my jurisdiction. And the direction that we're heading in, especially with these Supreme Court picks, they may overturn Roe v. versus Wade. And I'd hate to hear more of these coat hanger stories happening.
You've got two very pissed off girls right here.
Yeah.
Well.
I just want to point out that the fact of the matter is that if this woman had the option to have an abortion when you're supposed to or allowed to have an abortion, she wouldn't have done this. She wouldn't be facing these charges, and this wouldn't even be a problem. And we wouldn't have to then put another person in jail, because apparently we have to do, and put everyone in jail for things. It makes me livid that people feel that they need to control this other person's action that could be not only helping them, but helping their child, because they may not be able to handle this child, and this child may then have its life they may already be going against everything, and they're already at a disadvantage from the moment they're born because they can't be handled by the people that have given birth to them.
It's the whole we love the fetus but hate the baby kind of rhetoric, right? It's
absolutely appalling, especially the fact that this woman had to go to such extremes because she had no other choice of control over her body. She's getting penalized and she's getting incriminated for taking control of her body and doing this to herself because no one else would let her, because she could not get the consent of someone else to let her do something that was her choice and her decision to make for her own body. For all the reasons that Cameron stated, she could have plenty to why she didn't want this baby.
Right. And, you know, just kind of the nature of how it happened just goes to show you how dangerous it can be to overturn something like Roe v. Wade. Just something to think about. All right, y'all, we'll be right back. Mike Riley Now podcast.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.
And we're back. I wanted to sound like a game show host. Welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. I am your host, Mike Riley. God bless Charlie and Cam up in here and our lovely studio audience. What's going on? Please log on to MikeRileyNow.com and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Go on iTunes and subscribe. If you have an Android phone, download it on Stitcher and please leave a review. Tell us how good we're doing. Tell us how bad we're doing and all that cool stuff, because it definitely helps to put the show together. And I tell you this every week, but we will be broadcasting live pretty soon, probably at the beginning of next year. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. All right, we are entering the third segment of our show, which is our economics portion. I want to start this off by talking about capitalism and what capitalism really is, right? Capitalism is kind of like this cultural identity that has taken place within our nation that I think has really kind of molded our psychological kind of structure in a way where we see it okay to have a society of winners and losers, almost like pretty much social Darwinism. This idea of having a society of haves and have-nots. I was reading this article where there is this Native American tribe up in Canada. And yes, they're Native Americans because Canada's in America too. North America. And this tribe, before the Europeans came, they had a completely different culture, different way of doing things. And they didn't have jails. They didn't lock people up in jails. What they did with their, so somebody raped or murdered or stole or something like that back in those days, what they did was they did banishment. They didn't put you in jail. They had no concept of jail. They didn't even understand what the hell a jail was. They didn't have this idea of putting human beings in cages. Now that seems completely normal to us. And on the flip side of that, we have this idea of capitalism where a few can benefit, but others cannot. And that kind of segues me into privatization. And I can't say that word right, but it's pretty much privatizing things that are for the commons, because it is kind of like a capitalist kind of mantra, if you will, or a capitalist ideal. I bring this up because Donald Trump has appointed Betsy DeVos as to run the Department of Education. Betsy DeVos is a staunch believer in privatizing our public school system. Right? Now, what does this mean? What does privatization mean for a lot of people who don't understand what privatizing things means? There's two sections of our pretty much how things work. There's the private sector, and then there's a private sector, and then there's the public sector, right? The public sector are things that deal with public or government things, right? You have like the FBI, the police are public. Like there's private security, and then you have like the police, right? And then you have public entities such as like the DMV and stuff like that. And then you have private organizations that sometimes do things that public organizations in other countries do, like healthcare, for example. Health insurance is privatized in this country because it's ran by private insurance companies instead of being ran by the government. Our school system is part of what we call the commons. Now, there are private schools. I went to private school when I was younger, and there are public schools, right? The reason why we have public schools is because we came up with this idea. Thomas Jefferson adopted this idea hundreds of years ago, but when the country first started, we have these things that we share in called the commons. These are things that means that no matter where you were born, how, what economic situation you were born in, whatever the situation may be, you would have the same shot as something else as everybody else. Especially education, which is a big thing. I mean, that's why, Thomas Jefferson founded the University of Virginia. Matter of fact, he said when he died, to put on my tombstone, don't put that I was the president of the United States, put that I was the founder of the University of Virginia. And he opened it up as a free school to everybody, so everybody can come in and get a free education.
It was one of the 3 things that he was proud of in his whole career.
Yeah, literally. And because he believed in this idea, same thing with Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln started the university system and opened up free universities during the Civil War.
Land colleges.
Yeah, land colleges, excuse me. And this was because we as a society believed in this idea that there are just certain things that we all pitch in together so everybody can have the same shot, so we can all be in this together. Now, when you privatize things, what happens? All right. You charge people stuff for it. So that means that people that can't afford it don't have access to it.
We take something that should be equal and evenly distributed to the entire population, and we turn it into a hierarchy system.
Literally. Now think about our university system, for example. You can't go to school unless you're rich.
Yeah, that's the thing that really, really, really grinds my gears, because I mean, I have a brother that's going to be going to college next year, and I'll be following him the year after. And I'm looking at my college options and the ones that I could go to, and I'm having to scratch off my list some of my perfect ideal colleges that have everything I could ever be looking for, but they're 62 grand and don't give scholarships for anything other than financial aid. And I fit in the category, this really awkward middle class category, where I don't qualify for financial aid, but I'm not rich enough to pay for college.
So this is what you can do. You can go into debt.
Yeah, I can go into student debt and then be paying it off for the rest of my life.
Literally, that's what you can do. And that's what they want you to do. This is the type of system that they're trying to create. They're trying to create this system where and they're talking about doing this thing called which are vouchers, which are vouchers that are issued by the state. But who pays for those vouchers? That still has to come from taxpayer money. So no matter what the case is, it's pretty much a lose-lose for poor people and a win-win for people who have money. And if you think about our school system, and this is the reason why they try to implement the privatization of our public school system. They say because the public school systems have failed. Go to public schools and look how shitty they are. You got rundown schools, you got crappy books, you got stuff like that. Well, gee golly whiz, I wonder why. It's because our public schools are funded through property taxes. So that means that if you live in a low-income neighborhood that has low property taxes, that means that your school is not getting a lot of money in order to fix itself up. But if you live, which doesn't make any damn sense if you ask me, but if you live in a nice neighborhood, in a rich neighborhood, and your property taxes are high, you go to a nicer school. If you get higher test scores, you get more federal money from the government. So that means that nicer schools stay nice and poorer schools stay poor. This was something that came about during the Jim Crow era after Reconstruction. Why? Because of segregation. It was simple. The blacks lived in the poor part of town, and they went to the poor schools. So therefore, they got the least amount of funding. And they wanted to keep it that way, because then when you have low funding and you have low schools, you have, basically poor education.
And poor education stops people from questioning their place in society.
Literally. And you hear libertarians argue, well, if you go to specific places, they've spent tons of money per student, in places like Wisconsin and Nebraska, it's $12,000, or however much per student per year to get an education and they're still dropping out. They're still not coming around. And so the best thing to do is to give parents different options so that way we can set up charter schools and privatize our school system and voucherize it so that way parents can have different options to send their kids to a different school. Great. I am not against people setting up private schools. You want to set up a private school, fine. But if you set up private schools and you try to lean towards a situation of privatizing our government, all you're doing is taking money away from the public sector. They want to turn public schools the same way they do public defenders. You know, you get in trouble, you can go with a public defender, which is the shitty one, who's probably going to end up, you know, making you cop a plea bargain of triple life, or you can, you know, hire a private lawyer. But why is that? Is because we don't put a lot of money into our public, into the system of public defenders. There's no forward for it.
So Cameron and I go to a charter school, but before that I went to a public school, which, since it was in a decent area of town, it was a good school. And it just shows that if we give proper funding to public schools, they can be brilliant. You know, this school, I would not trade my education at this school with one of a private school. You know, I did not see that I lacked in anything from a good public school education. And it just shows that if we take all this money that we're trying to use to privatize and take more and more away from the public schools, then yes, public schools are going to fail, but they're not a failed system from the start. They can work if we give them money.
Or if we invest time into the curriculum itself.
I just want to show the fact that how schools are still kind of slated in the way that people of minorities are put in schools that aren't able to help them in the way they need. When I've gone to so many different schools, and one of the schools that I went to, it was an amazing public school, amazing education. This school had 3 Black students in my grade, and there were 300 of us, and that was it. And they were not allowing people from even out of our little town. Our town had maybe 10,000 people in it altogether. They weren't letting anyone else from outside come to our town. These people, in order to get their children into this school, had to go and buy an apartment, an awful little apartment, just so they could allow their children to go to school where they had a future.
Right.
Hey, Brooke Doherty here. I just want to say, as a person that's run an after-school program, that one of the things that I think is really, really unfair with public school is that public schools in affluent areas have the money that's given to them by the feds and the state, but they also have a body of parents that have resources, cash, expertise in fundraisers, and what's not supplied to the school, they provide. Our local school, high school, wanted a swimming pool, and they are a public school with a swimming pool because of fundraising. So public school at its worst is not equal, but the way that it is now, since the economy took a giant tumble, right, is that kids that used to go to private school that can no longer afford that huge tuition are now going to local public schools that are largely subsidized in those after-school hours from 3 to 6 by parent donations, which makes it, to me, even less cool than private school, where you pay your money and you're a customer and you get your education. So I think that we have to make a distinction between elite public schools and everybody else's public schools and private school. That's all I had to say.
Right. Well, very well said. And to kind of piggyback off of that real quick, one of the things I don't understand about privatization so much is, why do people trust billionaires and trust corporations more than they trust the government? I mean, you control the fucking government. I mean, you're there. You can vote. You can run for office. You can do things like that. You can't really control a corporation. I mean, unless you sue or run for chairman of the board or something like that. But that's not really how that works.
I think the thing is that they don't trust themselves. If they don't know what's going on in the government and they are the government, then how are they going to trust it?
You don't trust yourself.
I think a lot of people are trying to find someone to lead them because they are kind of almost scared of leading themselves and scared of kind of screwing up. So they're trying to find this like giant corporation. Not that they're thinking about it maybe as deeply, but I think subconsciously a lot of them are just like, oh, well, if they're going to make the decision and they say it's better for me, then why not go with them?
Yeah.
It's easier to blindly follow someone than it is to become the leader yourself.
I agree. And I think that's one of the main reasons why so many people are kind of getting sucked in. But I want to read something real quick before we end the show. There's this article that was written back in 1981 when Ronald Reagan was first taking office, before most of us in this room were even thought about. And it was written by Terry Herndon from the New York Times. The title of the article is Public Education, a Casualty of Reaganomics. It starts out, as the price of Reaganomics becomes clear. Now, these are the same Reaganomic principles that are being implemented by Donald Trump, Mike Pence, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and all of them today. As the price of Reaganomics becomes clear, Americans are becoming edgy. Teachers are downright nervous. Who are the true believers in public education are nearly frantic. We who are the true believers in public education are nearly frantic. In the big budget fight of 1980, we saw the president strive for a 30% reduction in federal aid to education. It goes on to read. And this is when the Koch brothers were starting the Heritage Foundation. Consider the impact of the Heritage Foundation's game plan for education, as it's faithfully implemented by the Reagan administration. They want to eliminate federal support for public education. The president wants to wipe out more than 90% of the current federal education spending by 1984. They want to use the presidential pulpit to inflame passions regarding prayer in schools, sex education, censorship, creationism, and other issues that complicate the politics of politically financed schooling. They want to grant tax credits for tuition to private schools. They want to destroy the Department of Education and thereby assure that there will never be a serious institutional advocate for the public education within the federal structure. I think that this is the overall agenda of what they're really trying to get to. All right, y'all, that is our show. Thank you so much for listening. And please subscribe. God bless Charlie. God bless Cam. God bless Brooke, Allie, my man Nick, Isaac over there, and God bless all of you for tuning in. The worst part of the show is when we run out of time. We will be back next week. Please log on to MikeRileyNow.com. Tell your friends about it and subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you very much. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. It starts with you. Get involved. We're all in this together. Cheers.
You are listening to the Mike
December
Riley Now
1st.
podcast.
That's right.
On the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.